7-12. Paul's trial before Festus. Festus stayed at Jerusalem about 10 days, and then went down to Caesarea, and the prosecutors, it is likely, in his retinue, for he said they should go down with him, and, since they are so eager in the prosecution, he is willing this cause should be first called, and, that they may hasten home, he will dispatch it the next day. Expedition in administering justice is very commendable, provided more haste be not made than good speed. Now here we have the court set, and the prisoner called to the bar. Festus sat in the judgment seat, as he used to do when any cause was brought before him that was of consequence, and he commanded Paul to be brought, and to make his appearance. v6. Christ, to encourage his disciples and keep up their spirits under such awful trials of their courage as this was to Paul, promised them that the day should come when they should sit on thrones, judging the tribes of Israel. The prosecutors exhibiting their charges against the prisoner. v7. The Jews stood round about, which intimates that they were many. Lord, how are they increased that trouble me? It intimates also that they were unanimous, they stood by one another, and resolved to hold together, and that they were intent upon the prosecution, and eager in clamoring against Paul. They stood round about, if possible, to frighten the judge into a compliance with their malicious design, or, at least, to frighten the prisoner, and to put him out of countenance, but in vain, he had too just and strong an assurance to be frightened by them. They compassed me about like bees, but they are quenched as the fire of thorns. When they stood round about him, they brought many and grievous accusations against Paul, so it should be read. They charged him with high crimes and misdemeanors. The articles of impeachment were many, and contained things of a very heinous nature. They represented him to the court as black and odious as their wit and malice could contrive, but when they had opened the cause as they thought fit, and came to the evidence, there they failed. They could not prove what they alleged against him, for it was all false, and the complaints were groundless and unjust. Either the fact was not as they opened it, or there was no fault in it. They laid to his charge things that he knew not, nor they neither. It is no new thing for the most excellent ones of the earth to have all manner of evil said against them falsely, not only in the song of the drunkards, and upon the seat of the scornful, but even before the judgment seat. The prisoners insisting upon his own vindication. v8. Whoever reproaches him, his own heart does not, and therefore his own tongue shall not, though he die, he will not remove his integrity from him. When it came to his turn to speak for himself, he insisted upon his general plea, not guilty, neither against the law of the Jews, nor against the temple, nor yet against Caesar, have I offended anything at all. He had not violated the law of the Jews, nor taught any doctrine destructive of it. Did he make void the law by faith? No, he established the law. Preaching Christ, the end of the law, was no offense against the law. He had not profaned the temple, nor put any contempt at all upon the temple service. His helping to set up the gospel temple did not at all offend against that temple which was a type of it. He had not offended against Caesar, nor his government. By this it appears that now his cause being brought before the government, to curry favor with the governor and that they might seem friends to Caesar, they had charged him with some instances of disaffection to the present higher powers, which obliged him to purge himself as to that matter, and to protest that he was no enemy to Caesar, not so much as those were who charged him with being so. Paul's appeal to the emperor, and the occasion of it. This gave the cause a new turn. Whether he had before designed it, or whether it was a sudden resolve upon the present provocation, does not appear, but God puts it into his heart to do it, for the bringing about of that which he had said to him, that he must bear witness to Christ at Rome, for there the emperor's court was. The proposal which Festus made to Paul to go and take his trial at Jerusalem. v9. Festus was willing to do the Jews a pleasure, inclined to gratify the prosecutors rather than the prisoner, as far as he could go with safety against one that was a citizen of Rome, and therefore asked him whether he would be willing to go up to Jerusalem, and clear himself there, where he had been accused, and where he might have his witnesses ready to vouch for him and confirm what he said. He would not offer to turn him over to the high priest and the Sanhedrim, as the Jews would have had him, but, wilt thou go thither, and be judged of these things before me? The president, if he had pleased, might have ordered him thither, but he would not do it without his own consent, which, if he could have wheedled him to give it, would have taken off the odium of it. In suffering times, the prudence of the Lord's people is tried as well as their patience, being sent forth therefore as sheep in the midst of wolves, they have need to be wise as serpents. Paul's refusal to consent to it, and his reasons for it. He knew, if he were removed to Jerusalem, notwithstanding the utmost vigilance of the president, the Jews would find some means or other to be the death of him, and therefore desires to be excused, and pleads that, as a citizen of Rome, it was most proper for him to be tried, not only by the president, but in that which was properly his court, which sat at Caesarea. I stand at Caesar's judgment seat, where I ought to be judged, in the city which is the metropolis of the province. The court being held in Caesar's name, and by his authority and commission, before one that was delegated by him, it might well be said to be his judgment seat, as, with us, all writs run in the name of the sovereign, in whose name all courts are held. Paul's owning that he ought to be judged at Caesar's judgment seat plainly proves that Christ's ministers are not exempted from the jurisdiction of the civil powers, but ought to be subject to them, as far as they can with a good conscience, and, if they be guilty of a real crime, to submit to their censure, if innocent, yet to submit to their inquiry, and to clear themselves before them. That, as a member of the Jewish nation, he had done nothing to make himself obnoxious to them. To the Jews have I done no wrong, as thou very well knowest. It very well becomes those that are innocent to plead their innocency, and to insist upon it. It is a debt we owe to our own good name, not only not to bear false witness against ourselves, but to maintain our own integrity against those who bear false witness against us. That he was willing to abide by the rules of the law, and to let that take its course, v. 11. If he be guilty of any capital crime that deserves death, he will not offer either to make resistance or to make his escape, will neither flee from justice nor fight with it. I refuse not to die, but will accept of the punishment of my iniquity. Not that all who have committed anything worthy of death are obliged to accuse themselves, and offer themselves to justice, but, when they are accused and brought to justice, they ought to submit, and to say both God and the government are righteous, as it is necessary that some should be made examples. But, if he be innocent, as he protests he is, if there be none of these things whereof these accuse me, if the prosecution be malicious and they are resolved to have my blood, right or wrong, no man may deliver me unto them, no, not the governor himself, without palpable injustice, for it is his business as much to protect the innocent as to punish the guilty, and he claims his protection. His appealing to court. Since he is continually in danger of the Jews, and one attempt made after another to get him into their hands, whose tender mercies were cruel, he flies to the dernier resort, the last refuge of oppressed innocency, and takes sanctuary there. Since he cannot have justice done him in any other way, I appeal unto Caesar. Rather than be delivered to the Jews, which Festus seems inclined to consent to, let me be delivered to Nero. When David had divers times narrowly escaped the rage of Saul, and concluded he was such a restless enemy that he should one day perish by his hands, he came to this resolution, being in a manner compelled to it: there is nothing better for me than to take shelter in the land of the Philistines. So Paul here. But it is a hard case that a son of Abraham must be forced to appeal to a Philistine, to a Nero, from those who call themselves the seed of Abraham, and shall be safer in Gath or Rome than in Jerusalem. How is the faithful city become a harlot? The judgment given upon the whole matter. Paul is neither released nor condemned. His enemies hoped the cause would be ended in his death, his friends hoped it would be ended in his deliverance, but it proved neither so nor so. They are both disappointed, the thing is left as it was. It is an instance of the slow steps which Providence sometimes takes, not bringing things to an issue so soon as we expect, by which we are often made ashamed both of our hopes and of our fears, and are kept still waiting on God. The cause had before been adjourned to another time, now to another place, to another court, that Paul's tribulation might work patience. The president takes advice upon the matter. He conferred with the council metagio symboliou, not with the council of the Jews, that is called Ryan, but with his own counselors, who were always ready to assist the governor with their advice. In multitude of counselors there is safety, and judges should consult both with themselves and others before they pass sentence. He determines to send him to Rome. Some think Paul meant not an appeal to Caesar's person, but only to his court, the sentence of which he would abide by, rather than be remitted to the Jews' council, and that Festus might have chosen whether he would have sent him to Rome, or, at least, whether he would have joined issue with him upon the appeal. But it should seem, by what Agrippa said, ch. 26:32, that he might have been set at liberty if he had not appealed to Caesar, that, by the course of the Roman law, a Roman citizen might appeal at any time to a superior court, even to the supreme, as causes with us are removed by certiorari, and criminals by habeas corpus, and as appeals are often made to the House of Peers. Festus, therefore, either of choice or of course, comes to this resolution: hast thou appealed unto Caesar? Unto Caesar thou shalt go. He found there was something very extraordinary in the case, which he was therefore afraid of giving judgment upon, either one way or other, and the knowledge of which he thought would be an entertainment to the emperor, and therefore he transmitted it to his cognizance. In our judgment before God, those that by justifying themselves appeal to the law they shall go, and it will condemn them, but those that by repentance and faith appeal to the gospel they shall go, and it will save them.